Do you want to introduce yourself to the Lawless audience who's never met you?
Oh, yeah, well, hi, Lawless audience. My name's Umar Ditta. I am a comic book writer. I wrote my first series probably about a few years ago, going back to 2016, so about 5 years ago, Untethered, a trilogy that I wrote with Elliot Bolton from Dundee. That was received well, and from then I have worked on Lad, which I have a recent Kickstarter coming out very soon again. Worked on that one with Carlos Pedro from Portugal. That again has been well received, so I'm hopefully onto something good here as well. And recently I've branched out into video game writing as well, just a little bit, right. Just yeah, with closed hands. But yeah, that's pretty much me.
All right. So what sort of video games you working on?
Oh well,
just a slightly different comics straight away.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was all quite a happy accident, as most things are. It was. Do you know Dan Whitehead?
Yeah.
Yeah. Dan reached out to me. I think around last summer. He invited me to write for a horror festival. Write a short comic for a horror festival anthology that I was doing. Basically, I think it was called Grimfest.
Right, yeah. I've certainly heard of Grimfest, yeah.
Yeah, in Manchester. Again, I'm 90% sure that's the title, but that's the title. But it was a horror film festival, and normally it's out in Manchester, but because due to COVID, it was all done digitally. So Dan reached out to me and asked me to do a short comic. So I did a giallo-based sort of slasher short story there for the anthology for Dan, and it was well received, and it was a bit of fun, a bit of a change from like the normal sort of bleak sort of stories that I did, because even though it was kind of horror and it was really like inspired by Argento and all that stuff, where it was just madness and bright colors. Samir Hamid worked on the artwork on that, right. And he really did a really good job. It really went for the sort of retro style of it. So after that, a couple of months after that, Dan put me in contact with another Dan Hett, who runs Passenger Games in Manchester, and he has been working on it's a video game, but it's a very experimental video game in which it follows the stories of people who are involved in a fictional, terrorist attack that happened in the UK. So right. It's from the perspective of the people. Like it's not in the traditional way we think. Oh, it's about the attack and everything around there, but more in it's about how it impacts the community and impacts people around. So it's kind of like a text-based adventure game, but with a lot of interactive components in it. Right. It's called Closed Hands. It just recently got released a couple of weeks ago. So about a year ago, maybe even 9 months ago, Dan Hett reached out to me to see if I could write on the story, on the game, and offer insight. And I took up on it because I love new challenges. I love to try something new, and it was a really good experience. I worked with Dan, the two Dans and myself, writing on it. And when it came to the actual project, I was focused on a character called Hazik, who was the father of the person who did the terrorist attack, and it was just how it impacted him and everything like that. So it's, really check it out. Closed Hand, Passenger Games.
So as a comics writer, I know you don't necessarily write episodic all the time, but as a comic writer, episodic writing lends itself to a computer game, doesn't it? To a degree. It's a different. Obviously, it's a different. It's a different medium, so there are differences to it, but it does have a link in style, doesn't it? I mean, there's people that go between the two.
Anthony Johnson for one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Johnston or whatever. Yeah, Anthony Johnson. He's one.
Yeah. There's a few that do it. So is with obviously we've already mentioned COVID with bringing you into that convention. With Untethered getting you quite a bit of success with Kickstarter.
Yeah.
And I know from talking to you before, you had you saw repeat people coming back.
Yeah.
And the audience growing, which then carried on to Lad, and which I picked up on from issue 1. I was going to wear my Lad T-shirt, but I don't know where I put it. And I did the same for Rock of the Red. I've done the Rock of the Reds panel, and I was going to wear my Rock T-shirt, and it was I was going to wear my away kit for Rock of the Reds.
Yeah.
And it was in the wash.
Oh no.
So I wore the earlier T-shirt that was a T-shirt, not a replica thing. But of course, the emblem was down here, out of view. Whereas if I'd actually worn the away strip, you can see on the shoulders the way that you can see the pattern of the away strip. So at least to Rock fans, they would have been able to tell just from the shoulders that I was wearing the away kit. And it's like, I can't believe I've done it again.
Well, it's the sentiment that matters. It's the sentiment that matters, Steve. I'll give you a pass. I'll give you a pass at that.
So so the as I say, you've got that audience building. Mm-hmm. So when COVID came along, and you were still doing Kickstarter, not from a Kickstarter point of view, not a lot of knock-on effect for you, which was which obviously was serendipity rather than planned. But what did you find with that change? Did you find the same people were still coming back and growing?
Well, when it came to Lad, because when COVID hit is when Lad issue 2 came out, and we did the Kickstarter, I think, around April 2020, which was
so you just,
so it
right at the beginning.
And it was honestly, because obviously the news started trickling in around the end of Feb. And I'll be honest, I was one of the first ones back when I was in my day job in the office, going like, people telling me, "Oh, looks like in like January and February, it looks like the thing's gonna come over." I'm like, "Is it, or is it going to be another sort of just
swine flu, bird flu?"
Yeah. But then when March came along, it got bigger and bigger, and obviously, working from home was being involved, shielding, and all these terms that we never heard of before. So it was becoming very real, very quick. But then I was also thinking about the Lad Kickstarter, and I had to talk to Hugo, who's the editor, Hugo Boylan, on the comic, and Carlos, going, is this right? Because there was multiple factors that we had to consider, which was, would we reach our goal? Because thinking in the printing cost, the posting, packaging, and everything to that nature, we had like an estimate in mind, printing with the CP UK and everything. And also we were thinking, this is right at the time when the word furlough and people getting laid off their job were coming, all these like big scary words along with COVID. And the last thing I want to do was sort of not even exploit, but sort of where people would be, I've only got a set amount of income this month, and I didn't want to be like, put quite a lot of it towards this comic that I know that you want, but do you need? Like, so there's a lot of that sort of discussions, and luckily, talking to Carlos and Hugo, we sort of came to a consensus where I knew for a fact I wasn't going to get as much numbers, and in fact, the numbers reflect on that. Where Lad 1 was quintessentially the most backers I had. I think it was about 200 plus, maybe 220, 250, something like that. And I was expecting, because normally you expect like a drop, but just looking at Untethered, where it goes from, I think it was about 150 backers, and the following issues tend to drop off because people just seem to drop off, but you get the same repeat people reading. And for Lad, I was thinking maybe I would have maybe 50 or 60 less, but obviously taking in COVID into consideration, I was like, might be a bit more, but I'm not sure. It ended up being about 100 less people with a second Kickstarter. But thankfully, what I did with, because I think I put it in the Kickstarter as well, I put a little disclaimer saying, because this is what came up when I was talking to Carlos and Hugo. It was, I don't think I'll feel comfortable asking for the same amount or something similar to the same amount for the first issue, and I would be willing from my end to take a less of a cut, because, or like put some more of my money towards it, because obviously it's hard time. I don't want to exploit or like rack up the prices just because it'll help my bottom line and all that stuff. But
yeah,
so I put a disclaimer saying we're not going to be asking for as much as we would, because we're still in difficult times. And luckily we did manage to hit that target, and I think by some fluke we managed to hit a stretch goal, but the number of backers were less. However, when I was looking at the number of the names in the backers, there were a lot of repeat people, as far as I think some in Holland, because that's the thing, that you will recognize the names that come in when you're like, wait, that's a guy from Netherlands. Yeah, it's the same guy that backed in the last one. So even in a pandemic, it's quite encouraging, where you got people as far as 5,000 miles away who still want to read your stories. And so it was, to put it simply, it was bittersweet. I knew it was going to impact the Kickstarter from my side, but luckily the people who stuck through with it wanted to stick with the book, and even without Thought Bubble happening as well, because that was what we always try to do with Lad, and even my previous books are sort of launch them on Thought Bubble Day, and Thought Bubble is a massive festival. Yeah, and that was another thing. But yes, it did impact the Kickstarter, but it didn't ruin the traction that we made with the first issue. Really, it just slowed it down a little bit, but I think the momentum's coming back up.
Yeah. So as well as because that was the next thing I was going to get onto, how the lack of cons has affected you. As well as Thought Bubble, which, as you say, is absolutely huge. I mean, as a pure comic convention, I think it must be the biggest in the UK. I think it's probably even big in Europe. As a pure comics, as a pure comic convention, because obviously the bigger ones that get more numbers going to them, and Thought Bubble will get a lot of numbers, but the ones that are bigger, it's film, TV, and comics, isn't it?
Whole page and all that stuff. Which ones.
Whereas Thought Bubble is 100% comics and Lawless, which is completely different scale to Thought Bubble. At Lawless, for those that don't know, including Umar, because we've never invited him.
Putting it in there, Steve. I appreciate that, Steve.
The Lawless is a very small convention. Started off with 60 paying public. I think it was in the very first one we had, which was originally in Birmingham. Now we have around 200 paying public, so we've grown quite a bit. We don't actually intend to grow anymore. That's actually where we want to stay, but we have we have 20 plus guests. Nice. So you've got less than 10 to 1 public to guest, no queues.
Yeah, which is
they can see
how it should be.
The public can see everybody they want to see. It's very, very intimate. We all end up in the pub with each other. The guests as well. The after party is go around the local, just go to one of the local pubs and take it over. And you got
that's where I guess the sort of similarities come to Thought Bubble as well, because those pubs, nothing better than going to the pub and just relaxing after a con.
And we've all been missing those things, obviously, because it's not just the for the paying public. I'm avoiding calling people what I normally call punters. It's not just for the punters going along and getting a bag load of comics, and it's not just for the creators going around and selling. It's the networking. It's the community, isn't it? Everybody builds up connections, to different people. That's how I've got to know quite a lot of people I talk to in the comic world. By networking in those things. So, which other conventions have you missed out on?
It was funny because for the first couple of years when I was because I always just used to go to Thought Bubble because it's the big one down the road, and maybe go to the MCM every now and then as a punter. And then when I first released Untethered, for the first couple of issues, I only kept it to Thought Bubble because I didn't want to go out to too many cons. But literally, I think, was it the last year? So I think it was either the year that Lad was released or just the year before. I went to a few cons. I went to Oldham Con, which is a fantastic con, and it was a shame I only went there once because it was literally in 2019, and I think it's around a May-April con, and I was like, this is great because I think Dennis Whittle runs that one, and fantastic guy. I went there, and it was great. And then I was going to say, all right, 2020, I think I might go to a few more cons. Well, that didn't quite pan out. So it was right at that perfect, right. The timing just was off, right when I was going to maybe venture out to maybe a few more cons, maybe 3 or 4, or, but back to square one now, unfortunately.
We were going to expand to 2 days in 2020.
Yeah.
We were keeping it under our hat, and we're going to announce nearer the time. And then it comes to January when all the big plans need to be done, and it's like, we're going to have to cancel, aren't we?
Yeah.
We for 2022, we will now be doing a 2-dayer. Same scale.
It sounds good.
Same place.
Yeah.
It's down in Bristol. That's the only downside to inviting creators from the north is asking them to come to a small convention all the way down there. But we get repeat guests because it is a friendly thing. So I'll send you a line next year. See if you
absolutely. And if it lands up, if I'm able to make it down,
and I hike down from Leeds.
Not too far from here. Not too far from here.
I ought to try and organise one up here, since with Thought Bubble moving over to Harrogate.
I
ought to maybe try.
That was interesting.
Try and think. It's a lovely hall, isn't it? I was got to say I was concerned about the move. Because I didn't like it where it moved to in Leeds, but I loved it at the Armories. That was a brilliant place for it. But it
just got too big.
It grew too big for it. It was a victim of its own success, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And then when it moved to the centre of Leeds, it just didn't feel right.
It was too much of a maze.
It was too much, too many different. I mean, there was plenty of space for it, but too many different places, and going through security at every single one with them using the security firm they used. Your bag's searched on every single one.
Yeah.
And it's like, I've got sharps in there. I've got diabetes. Yeah. So when it moved to Harrogate, I was slightly concerned, but it was a good move.
Yeah, they pulled it off.
The hall's so big, multiple halls, they're good sizes, and their organisation skills are good as well.
Second to none, absolutely.
It's obvious why we don't clash with them.
Yeah.
Nobody clashes with Thought Bubble on purpose, do they?
No. It was always purely accidental. I take it like, oh no, we've sort of encroaching into Thought Bubble's place. Well, we got to move ours because Thought Bubble doesn't tend to move their sort of dates and stuff. But no, it were with the networking over because obviously with the cons themselves, that whole mindset changed. And funnily enough, what I sort of found myself doing over the lockdown period in terms of social media is, I sort of kept going on social media, kept interacting, but then it just sort of clicked. I just sort of woke up one day, I think it was around summer, and I was like, I don't like it. It's too much of just posting and interacting. So I sort of scaled down on my sort of contact with sort of like-minded people in comics, just to sort of, because there's a lot of noise out there. There's a lot of especially when you just look at the sort of right in the heart of the pandemic, where there was doom and gloom anyway, and just people adding that needless sort of doom and gloom onto it. I was like, I'm going to take a little sojourn away from this. I'm just going to sort of partner up with people that I know. So like people that Ben Philby, who's done a few prints for Lad, Adlai, a good mate of mine, and a bunch of other people on the sort of Discord, like little Discord groups and little sort of communities, sub-communities within comics. Sort of how I found them sort of growing in the lockdown, because obviously we couldn't meet up in cons, we couldn't catch up in person. So what tend to happen is sort of regular sort of like Zoom meetings, which I stopped doing these now, but back when it was in the middle of the lockdown, we used to have Zoom chats with like 15 or 20 other comic creators, and it was just pandemonium. It was just everyone. It was brilliant. It was as close as you can get to that sort of after the con sort of pub vibe. But it was just something to get going, really. Well, to replace the networking that wasn't quite there.
Yeah, good to be able to keep in touch. So with Lad, with Untethered, you didn't have an editor or extras in the team. With Lad, you've got an editor and a designer, Dermot Kelly. Well, obviously she brought design. But other than the silly part of that question, what did Dervler bring to Lad?
Dervler brought like the sort of aesthetic of Lad. So just to go through sort of like the beat by beat, the logo was designed by Dervler, as was the sort of the binding of the pages put together. The sort of, because I think there are pull quotes from other creators, and that sort of the cards, the sort of title cards that say, for example, Kieran Gillen thinks that sort of aesthetic, and she did this really good the video that we use for the Lad, the sort of teaser. She sort of put that together, and obviously Dervler, in case people don't know, has worked on as a colorist for so many books, and like she's beyond talented. Like when I managed to
top of my head, first thing I think of is Red Sonja. She's done a lot.
Red Sonja,
as you say.
Absolutely. And what she brought to the table, because obviously Dervler is a good friend of mine, and going back to Thorvald, that's where we catch up a lot. And I never really thought that, because obviously we're talking about Red Sonja and all these other titles that she's done, because I think she's worked on I can't remember the EC, was it Harley? Again, I don't want to say something in case it isn't, but
you nearly said sounds like it might be right. I can't.
Harley Quinn. I think she had, but that's the thing. I'm like if you're not sure, just have a look at her portfolio, and it's just staggering. And so it was quite a coup when we managed to get her on the team, and also I think she's done a few prints. Yeah, she has done a few prints. The one that I really like, the sort of where it's Lad just facing against the forest and just eyes and all these like abstract figures in the forest, and that's what basically Dervler brought, sort of putting the book together, really. And because and that's sort of like what I would think. Again, my own sort of personal bias, that sort of professional touch to it, that sort of like polished feeling to the book.
It is a very polished looking book.
Appreciate it.
Do you want to talk a little bit about Untethered and Lad,
Okay.
the premise, because you've got them, they're available on your big cartel, aren't they?
Yeah. But both are, and obviously got the
until
Kickstarter
people
coming
can
up soon.
until people can go to cons.
Yeah. For the time being, the big cartel and me going to the post office will have to do.
Yeah. So do you want to tell people a little bit about both?
Yeah, absolutely. So Untethered in fact it came from a short story from Elliot, who drew the comic, and the basic premise is like, this is like the pitch that I do whenever someone comes to my table at a con, is what happens if you drink the contents of a genie's bottle. So yeah, it's like straight away it's like,
a bit tipsy,
yeah, exactly. So so what happens from there? So Elliot had like this short story, I think it's about 6 pages, about exactly like a guy who's in a pub in Scotland, and he drinks the contents of a genie's bottle and he passes away, but then he leaves his corporeal form, and it sort of ends there. And then Elliot sort of reached out to me, and just to give a bit of backstory as well, Elliot and myself, we were acquainted with each other through the old, if you remember, the Millerworld forums. That's how we sort of knew each other, sort of collaborated on there, and then obviously he reached out to me with the story, and because in the meantime I used to do a bunch of short stories as well, and never really bit my teeth into a full 22-page, a full issue. And to be honest, got the encouragement from Elliot to say, no, have a crack at it, and that's where Untethered was born. It was planned to be originally just a one shot, but the sort of unpacking that I sort of got from the story, where I took the premise of Elliot's short story, but I was like, this can carry on, or there's other factors that we can add on to it, where to actually formulate some sort of antagonist, some sort of mythology behind it, because that's the thing. I wanted to create the world, but without it being based in anything, because I like the sort of abstract feeling that I went for with it.
Yeah, and a bit of gin politics.
Yeah, exactly. Where the sort of what I liked about it is I never went to one sort of philosophy or one way of thinking, or like, because that's the whole point. It's similar to when you're sort of dealing with this sort of like the gin sort of formulation and all this sort of abstract. I'm like, be as loose as you can, and I think I kind of got away with like being kind of hard and fast with it, and like just making it all.
It can slightly fit any version.
Yeah, exactly.
Somebody's got an idea in their mind. If you're loose with it, it can still fit their conception and not jar them.
Yeah, and
pull them along your story with you.
Absolutely, and to ground it all, I did this. I based the story through the central character, which is a guy called Frank, and to sort of make it relatable, I kind of gave him a hopefully sort of like a tragic end, because obviously there is a comedy moments in it. I want it to be funny, and I also wanted horror elements in it. But in the heart of it, I wanted it to be, this is the story of a guy which, like, we could take a concept, we can laugh at it and make it funny, but then also wanted to flip it on its head to be like, yeah, but this is this person's life that is affecting. It may sound funny, but let's unpack that. So that's the sort of route I went down with Untethered.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to oversell it here, but Shakespearean comedy, drama, the crux of even one of Shakespeare's tragedies is there's always comedy in there. There's always something tying, because these are basic principles of storytelling after all, aren't they?
Absolutely.
Tying things to some form of reality, which is in Untethered, allows the fantastical a bit more
to have like a building appear out of nothing, but it's grounded within that reality that's in the universe.
And like I say, not to oversell it by saying the word Shakespeare, but that is the same basic principle to most tragedies, isn't it? Get them in there, and if you've got them in there in the right balance, it'll pull people along, and I think you got that.
Steve, you've made my day by
saying Shakespeare.
comparing to Shakespeare. That is that, because I've heard that people go, that's
supposedly related.
Yeah. Well,
my family are Hathaways.
All right, okay. So with whichever way it leads up, yeah. So then I can say Untethered has been called Shakespearean by the source, in a sense. Kind of. Yeah, I'll take that. But yeah, that's all that Lad was, and we decided Kickstarter for that because that was what everyone was using, and I'll be honest, it was my first time doing it. Very nervous, very daunting, but it paid through. All three were successful on the first go, and as I said before, we're well received by people, and we are planning at some point maybe to make a collected trade back of it with a little bonus story that myself, Elliot, and Mike have talked about in the past. Mike Maynard is the colorist. On it.
So a bonus story set in the same world.
A sort of like a little short bonus one, sort of more leaning towards a comical side, maybe, but we're still thinking about that probably when we put it together as a trade. But to be fair, we've been talking about that for about a year and a half, but obviously the lockdown sort of affected it differently.
I'd say that Untethered's not quite all ages, but not too far. But not too far away. It's a sort of thing that you certainly teens are safe with. I wouldn't even say older teens. Just teens. Teens are definitely safe with Untethered. When Lad gets a bit darker. And it does. You have put mature content. Warning. So tell us a little bit about Lad.
Lad is my sort of take on the sort of neo-noir thrillers. That it's something that it's watching films of I can never pronounce his name, but the guy who did Blue Ruin, Green Room, Jeremy I can never say his name. Jeremy Saulnier. He did.
I can't help you on that.
Yeah. Well, he did. I think he also did like the third season of True Detective. He directed some of those, so it's that sort of just dark and brooding sort of stories. But yeah, Lad is in a sense very sort of a high concept as Untethered, but a lot more grounded in not our reality, but some sort of reality that I've just sort of made up from where because obviously I grew up in the north and in the sort of like the working men's club sort of that you walk past, and the sort of grimy, sort of unkempt, towns that you see, because it well, put simply, the plot is it's about a family, but a crime family. Again, I do like to keep my themes vague so I can leave it for people's interpretation. So some sort of criminal family who live in a town which is surrounded by a forest that no one dares to really enter, because it's the home of an entity known as the Hermit. Which strikes fear into anyone who is around in the forest near the town. So it's like this mysterious entity that's there, and the family member, the patriarch of the family, Dad, that's the guy's name, and he's found in the forest, beaten and bloodied to a pulp by what people assume to be the Hermit, and it's basically what happens after that. It's the sort of fallout from what happens when their leader is beaten by the Hermit, and how this family, which is, and I purposely tried to make them full of, within their own rights, horrible people, but still want to make them human. I didn't want to make them cartoonish. I wanted, like, realistically, just as you mentioned, Steve, it's got adult warning, content warning on there. However, I didn't want it to be cartoonish and just over the top and just so that's basically the premise. I want it to be a slow burning sort of thriller with supernatural tinges in there. I want it to be. I didn't want my next book to be straight up. Oh, I'm going to do a superhero film. I'm going to go do a straight horror film. I wanted to keep that sort of the combination of genres that I had before, and hopefully I've sort of hit that sort of combination that I was going for with Lad, just to keep it going there.
It's a northern Peaky Blinders with I'm trying to get the right one because Supernatural's not the TV show is not quite strong enough, but Lucifer.
Yeah,
maybe.
it's with
but
and it is again just like with Untethered, to bring it central to a character. The central character of this book is Lad, that the book is named after, and he's an up and coming member of this family, and it's from his sort of perspective of what because what I tried to touch on there is a sort of of what it means to prove yourself, what it means in a sense. Lad is also a sort of twisted coming of age story.
Without spoiling it, he's an outsider of his own family, and yet somebody that the family knows has got promise.
Yes, yeah. So it's like which builds into the, like you say, the coming of age journey, traveling through life, and opens it up to conflict within the family, to outside the family, and everything. A whole world building. Just one, and again with one thing that I found what people really responded to was there's strong language, and there's really visceral content in it that Carlos really brings to life, but I never wanted it to be sensationalized. I never wanted it to be. I wanted to feel organic. Like, of course this person will talk this way. Of course,
makes sense.
Yes, even in its twisted
in its situation
way. So I'm really happy with how Lad's come out. In fact, obviously we've got the third Kickstarter coming out very soon. It's a 5-issue mini series that we got it intended. In fact, I'm just sort of working on the 5th issue in that for the script, where I have the plots all set out, but it's just also it's weird in that I don't want to finish it off so quickly, because obviously I'm really happy with how it's going. But on the same page, I do want to get rid of these horrible characters from my brain, because they're just horrible people, so I can move towards something a bit light, because there's only so much of these bleak
characters live within
people.
your head.
Exactly.
Which is why they've got their individual voices as well, of course. So it's a blessing and a curse.
Your
characters wouldn't have individual voices if they didn't also live in your head. So as well as Lad issue 3 coming out, and you move into computer games we talked about at the beginning. Have you got any other projects on the way?
Well, I have released just yesterday, in fact, a webcomic that I'm doing with Alyssa Barkley, I think her name is. She, I don't know as Alyssa. That's the thing, but it's called the Early Nights Cavalry. So going back to when you mentioned how Untethered was not quite all ages, but it was close enough. This is my attempt at a fantasy sort of D&D sort of anthology, really. So basically, how I sort of planned it in my head is shortcuts meets D&D. You know the Robert Altman film where there's a bunch of people living their lives with interconnecting stories.
Yeah,
it's like that. So there's I got a few 5-6 pages, short stories planned out. But what'll happen is it's just about a group of ragtag people who live in a fantasy city called Lulmore, but they are part of the district known as Early, and obviously they want to be the Early Knights Cavalry. So, they sort of want to prove themselves. So it's just sort of that world building around there, where it's you have a city where you have the affluent areas, you have the good areas, and you have the sort of the sort of layabouts, the criminal sort of characters there, but it's done within all ages, well, as close as I can, in all ages sort of lens. Yeah. And the first story has been written, and it'll be releasing every week. That one for the time being.
Right. Okay. Do you want to give the link to that?
Yeah. I can send that to you.
Yeah. And I'll pop it on at the end of the video. And your Big Cartel is quite an easy address to remember, is it?
Yeah, it's just my name. Yeah, just my name.
At Big Cartel. Yeah.
And I think also if obviously if you just read digital comics, I do have a Gumroad as well, which is still just my name at Gumroad with the comics I have. Yeah.
So hopefully somebody will pop along and
wherever it takes your fancy.
Have a look. Yeah. So thanks for your time in having a chat with me.
No, it's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure.
I might have asked you this when we did the Thought Bubble Fringe one. I don't know if I did. Is there anything about your comics that you've never been asked?
Well,
that you think you ought to be asked?
Yeah, well, probably. Yeah, it's the sort of. It's how well, I guess if I was to go for a freefall, it'd probably be how the ideas come to me, like because what I will do is it's a thing that I do on like Twitter as a joke sometimes. Sometimes I just write out pitch, and then I'll do either a really silly pitch, like I think yesterday I wrote a pitch, Jaws but in space, and then the next thing I tagged it with a picture of Richard Keel in Moonraker, and I went, oh wait, it's already been happened, it's already done. so sometimes they're a bit loose and funny, but sometimes I'll just basically write out a pitch and just to get the ball rolling in my head. And again, this might help someone who's wanting to do something creative from a writing perspective. Hopefully it might help, who knows. But this is normally my process, where I'll think of two concepts that don't even really relate to each other, and just sort of build it on from there. And I won't say, I won't stick with that and say, I might say Die Hard. I mean, always the default, Die Hard, but it's on a volcano, something like that, something really out there, something outlandish. But then from there, as a building block, to sort of plot out, okay, but how does that work? Well, okay, the volcano's hollowed out. Okay, why is it hollowed out? And then sort of beginning a sort of discussion with yourself, where you become your own critic of your pitch that you put out there. That's something that I really found to help me get an idea that, okay, this sounds all right. And when I can't really punch out any holes in the idea, or the holes are sort of not as big, I'd be like, okay, then you've got something here that you can write about. Otherwise, no, scrap it, go on to the next idea. So I'll have like a few ideas where it might be high concept, this meets that, or that this meets that by another thing. But then my brain would be like, no, that's stupid, start from scratch. No, start again. So, and that's how it keeps it active and coming up with new ideas.
Yeah.
How I find.
So even if you're doing it just as writing practice.
Yeah. Just random names, and like I said, if it all fails, it can be a funny joke on Twitter. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah. Right. Well, I say thanks a lot, and I'll drop you a line about next year, just in case.
Absolutely.
You could make it down to Bristol, and hopefully somebody will pop along after watching this video and look at one of your stores.
Yeah, hopefully, and
hopefully I'll see you in Thought Bubble.
Yeah, hopefully see you then. And hey, good luck with your video sort of, well, career now, isn't it? You're expanding out now, you were telling me, so good luck with that.
I'm planning on doing my own channel. and if I get myself organised, I'm gonna do it before Lawless, so that I can pimp Lawless.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
In my own video.
Yeah. Why not? Yeah, if that all lines up, send me a link, and I'm more than happy to promote it for you.
Yeah. Cheers. All right then.
No
Thanks
worries. It's been a pleasure.
All right.
See you later.
See you later, mate.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.